Hello, I'm back from the tutorial-ish live stream. I spent last night trying to figure out Max for Live. The biggest problem I encountered, I started using Reason a few years ago, which is this here on the right. It's a kind of rack-based, virtual rack-based program. I preferred it when I first started because I liked the idea of, being able to route my own, control the routing with actual cables. Very more of a hands-on person, despite the fact that now I've kind of preferred software, but sometimes I find myself touching hardware, and I like touching hardware. Giggity. Anyway, but I really enjoyed working with Reason, and then a couple of years ago, I started getting into Ableton Live, and learning a new DAW kind of took me away from playing around with Reason until I figured out that I could have both. But one of the things that was really lacking, in my opinion, was the ability to kind of control things as far as parameters, and you use Ableton as kind of the master and Reason as a slave, and Reason just becomes a glorified VST program, basically, with a bunch of tons of instruments and rack effects and all that kind of stuff. But it was very difficult to really do anything or have any kind of control over anything, because a lot of it you just have to automate, and you couldn't really play around with automation. It was more of a pain, until I thought recently of using Max for Live as a kind of liaison almost to control. So I built this over here. For those of you that are familiar with Reason, and you are also an Ableton user, this might be like the most awesome thing ever. It was when I started playing around with it, and when I finally figured it out. So essentially, this is a controller to control Combinator, the 4 knobs and buttons. As you can see, they're relatively the exact same position, but as I control one knob, rotary one moves. Obviously it's not as intuitive in the sense that it's not going to, rotary one's not going to be automatically named filter frequency when I change patches. But later down the road, if I decide on a patch and I want to keep it that way, then I can go into the Max editor, which is this funky little window, and then I can right click and go to the inspector and scroll down and look for the name and change the name. And the short name is the one that pops up, but it's also best to change the long name too. So I could leave the long name as rotary 1, but I could change it to filter frequency. And then I have to save the patch every time I change it. And now, which is a simple command of Control S. And now that's filter frequency. Now if I change a patch and that happens to be a different name, then I have to go back and change the thing again. So it's not as responsive And if it can be, I haven't figured it out. But it's not as responsive as any other kind of saved patch or the macros inside of Ableton. But it's still pretty awesome. Although there might be a way, now that I think about it, is using go into patching mode. So there's two modes. There's patching mode, which you get all these little connections and random things, and you basically build the patch and what each one looks like. I'm actually thinking here that I could trying to see if I can turn it into, there we go. I'm doing a test idea here to make it look like a macro knob. Change the font to give myself some more space. Yeah. There we go. I'm just gonna do this on one thing, and then save it on one thing, and then kind of test the idea. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't allow me to change it. Sorry. Having random ideas and thoughts to trying to figure stuff out. I'll go back to the way it was. The nice thing is you can line things up. It's got kind of a grid based. You can do that in presentation mode as well to make sure everything's cleaner. Kick that back up to 16 and readjust it. Like that. There we go. That looks better. Save. Boom. Back to normal. Anyway, that's kind of how it's made. And the nice thing is that because it's all CC values, it's really a really simple patch to make. Essentially, it's just the CC value message in. Whatever CC value you're looking for, you attach it to a knob that changes it, and then it goes back out. And so I did it for all of the MIDI, CC MIDI for Accommodator, which I found on the interwebs, the Reason 9 MIDI controller chart, and it goes through all of the different MIDI control numbers from 0 to 127. There's like a MIDI controller name, which is a common name for what that CC value is. And then it lists, the different titles of each thing, in Ableton, or excuse me, in Reason, that you can, that has a MIDI CC value. Of course, not everything in the Accommodator has a CC value, so you can't control everything. But, so like you can't hit a button to open the show programmer or that kind of stuff, but you can just do that in Reason. But it's really just the macro quote unquote controls and buttons to be able to kind of control them more over in Ableton freely, so you don't have to kind of go back and forth and mess with that in Reason, or you can almost find the patch you need or make the patch you need, map them in a combinator, and then come over to Ableton and even completely forget about Reason entirely. The other thing about this is that because some of these things are on the same kind of MIDI CC channel, or numbers, they're interchangeable, which is kind of nice, because the combinator is almost exactly the same as the insert effects on a channel. So on a channel strip, you've got the same kind of controls. You got rotary 1, button 1, and all that kind of stuff. But there's also a few other MIDI CC values, like level, width, pan, all that good stuff. Up here, mute solo, putting in effect sends and levels and all that kind of stuff on there. And each channel has a compressor and a gate and all that kind of stuff, because in the mix the mix channel each has all of these buttons and knobs and controls and that kind of stuff. So the mixer channel itself has a lot more MIDI CC. However, if I go into my external instrument, which is what I'm sending MIDI, how I'm sending MIDI to Reason in the first place, is I have this little selection box where I can choose the difference between the actual patch, which is a combinator, and then its mix channel. And I need to go in. Oh, no, it's saved. And now I have the ability to control the mix channels, rotary knobs, and buttons. Uh-oh. One of them got screwed up. That's the only thing about this, is that it's very pesky. And with this patch too, I've incorporated it with my Ableton Push, which I was just noticing a minute ago. I forgot about this. The nice thing about this Max for Live is it's got a lot of help around it. You kind of, if you're not sure what some things do, there's a nice little icon that kind of gives you a slight hint. And I'm really just kind of being the default basic here. I could make this pretty if I wanted to. I'm just choosing not to at the moment. Although I might later on dive deeper into making things look pretty and maybe go for that combinator look almost, because this has you get the little notches around the dial and that kind of thing, which is kind of cool. So it's more for experimentation of playing around with Max than anything. But what's kind of cool is that there's a lot of things that you can really decide with some of these inspector controls, as far as, instead of just naming things, but you can, choose its value and how it modulates, and, if it's unipolar, bipolar, additive, absolute. You can decide if it's going to have an initial value, so that like when in normal Ableton devices you can hit delete and it'll default to a certain initial value, and for combinators, for the most part, they're defaulted it dead center upright, 64. So I've done it with that, and then I really wish there was an ability to like notch a thing saying you could rename it, but unfortunately we can't. Maybe that'll be in a Max for Live update. Who knows? Or I do some digging and figure that out. But what's even better is that at the bottom here it says auto mapping index, and this is kind of cool because it defines the order in which parameters are automatically associated to the controls on a control surface, like the push or an APC40. So I've gone in and individually mapped, as I go through here, rotary 1 is number 1, 2 is 2, 3 and 3, and so on and so forth. But then like button 1 is 5, button 2 is 6, button 3 is 7. And then if I go on, if we look at my push, you might not be able to see it very clearly as I attempt to do this. Sorry. Ill prepared to move my camera. But on the push, filter frequency rotary 1, I haven't saved it yet. If I save it now, it should turn the rotary 1. Yep. So I got rotary 1, rotary 2, rotary 3, 4, button 1, button 2, button 3, 4, and it's the return and response from it is, like it should be, which is fantastic. And what's even better is it kind of helped me when I was patching this to look at the response from the push, because it kind of told me that, oh, this is how it's working and this is how it's not working, so on and so forth. So I guess I probably could have brought the push, picked the push up and put it in front, but I don't really want to do that. So anyway, I'll take the video out of the way so you can actually see the combinator itself. The last thing I did was a mod wheel, which is just channel 1, and with the insert effects it doesn't work because the insert effects don't necessarily have a mod wheel, unless, for instance, let's say we put in an effect like, just do a pulsar for shits and gigs. And we take the output of CV1 and do rotary. So this LFO is going to rotary 1 technically. Should be anyway. And I can map rotary 1 to LFO2's level. So technically this LFO is controlling that LFO's level, which is kind of cool. Alright. And rotary 1 almost controls, in essence, controls the intensity of it. And so now I have control using my push, which I'll show you. I'm using the push knob to control rotary 1 on reason, and it's controlling the intensity of an LFO, which is, to me this is amazing. I love it, and I love the ability that I made this with, live, Max for Live. Kind of cool. Where I was going with that, though, is there's also in here in this modulation routing matrix the ability to route a mod wheel. So I could technically, you know, change the LFO2 rate synced, and we'll tempo sync it. And I could use the mod wheel over here to control the rate of LFO2. So there's that. So it kind of works on insert effects in that regard. With combinators, it's pretty obvious. Combinator actually has a mod wheel. So, and if you're not a Reason user, this video is probably pointless, other than the fact that, say you have like, I guess, not pointless. I'll retract. For those of you that have like hardware synths or things like that, it's really easy to just kind of Google up your hardware and a MIDI implementation chart or some form of like chart that shows you the CC values of your whatever instrument that you have, and you can actually take the MIDI information that you send from Ableton Live's external instrument, right? And send that out to your instrument, and you know, bring back the audio in the same way, however you route it. Which for Rewire and Reason is pretty easy because, you know, it's configured to read it through Rewire. So I have, you know, MIDI out to Reason to the channel, and then on the back of Reason I just route all of my mix channels directly out to all of the more audio. And if you look in the audio from, you get all 64 channels coming out of Reason, which is quite nice. 'Cause it's a lot of ability to kind of route out. Granted, you know, the bigger the patches and everything, the more CPU heavy it gets. I mean, right now it's not too bad. But as I start playing like 4 or 5 patches, I mean, I'm already at 11% at the moment, and I'm just sitting idle with one program, so, or one patch. So it can get a little heavy on the CPU depending on your computer that you're using, especially when you're running 2 programs like both Ableton and Reason. They do sync up nicely though, you know, tempo is synced. I can even tap tempo on Reason and it'll pop up in Ableton, and because the clock is, you know, rewired. Hitting play on here and the transport plays over here too, so I have multiple transport buttons depending on what program I'm using. So on and so forth. So it's, and Reason itself has devices that I can use to kind of interchange between sending MIDI out and all that kind of stuff, so I can control MIDI using Reason's transport arrangement view kind of thing, and so on and so forth. The only thing that I've found that I cannot do until I get the proper hardware is routing a Ableton channel through like a mix channel here in Reason and using Reason based effects, which some of them are amazing and I've actually paid for, that I've missed dearly, and the only way I can get around that, which induces latency, is to route external audio out to physical cables and then patch them back in and somehow make Reason not a Rewire slave and just use Ableton Link to sync the clock. That's a project for another day. Until then, the best way I can utilize that is how I want to, is basically freeze flatten and bring it into audio and SOL basically. So maybe that could be another rewire update, is getting audio from a different, because you'd think that you'd just be able to take 3 and 4 and make it happen, but unfortunately you can't. And I've done it a couple times to and redone it to make myself think it will work. I'm probably gonna redo it again right now. External audio effect. Alright. Audio 2. I only have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6. I'm using 3 and 4 right now. One and 2 go to sampling input. Probably be good not to use this on a and have like a massive loop back. Let's do this in the sub. Alright, so I'll use this. And as you can see up here, there's no so it's going audio 2, right? 1 and 2. But the thing is that's 1 and 2 is going to my output. Now there's probably some form of, ASIO program I might be able to use to make it work, but like I said, it's another project for not this stream. Anyway, hey, leave me a comment if you think you know what I might be able to use. That'd be great. I'd like to know that. Seriously, because there are times that I want to use some of these awesome Reason effects that I've grown so accustomed to using, and would love to get back to you. I mean, this FET compressor was like over $100. I'm pretty sure. So was this reverb. I think I bought this pack for like $149, and I can't use them anymore. Well, I can. I want them in Ableton. Anyway, back to Max for Live and the awesomeness. I did the mix channel. That it also works in the hardware, master hardware section, that kind of thing. And the great thing is that this can be expanded. So every time I save the patch, I've saved it as, Max for Live device in Ableton. So if I pull up my browser, I've made a custom effects, folder, and I've thrown my Reason combinator control. I just shortened it so it doesn't, it's not this long title. And I can rename this so, if it's one or the other. Sometimes you might want separate controls for different, things. My immediate thought in this is just grouping the combinator control and then the MIDI too. You'll want the sound to come from something, right? So one chain will have, I will rename this, this will be the combinator. I can spell combinator. And then I'll create another chain and I'll bring in I'll actually just duplicate this. Alright. And what I'll do here is I'll do no input because I don't want dual inputs for audio, but I still want to send the MIDI out. And then this will be renamed mix channel. So now I have dual control. Alright, I got one that's going to the mix channel, and I got one that's going to the combinator itself. Now, kind of sucks because I have to flip back and forth, which, you know, not that bad. Could deal with it. And it also, you know, you have to label everything to make sure you're controlling, you know what the hell you're controlling. But that would be the workaround to, because they're using the same CC information, you just got to make sure you're sending that, directing that the way you want to direct it to, and you just have to use multiple, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. And again, I can, you know, there's a model wheel for the combinator, there's a model wheel for the mix channel, all that good stuff. I plan on expanding this, and I might even release, if I can figure out how to do it, on maxforlive.com. Upload these. And yeah, when I'm done, if you are a Ableton and Reason user and want something like this that I think has been missing forever, that would be, it'd be cool if you guys downloaded it and checked it out and used it for yourselves. And yeah, so I also could use some likes and some subscribers. You know, a typical like crap that you throw at the end of a video or stream. I really don't care, honestly. Even if one person watches this, it makes me happy, even if they don't even use Reason, because it'll be on the internet forever and people can reference it, and they can, you know, if you want to take time to do it yourself, to yourself, that's cool. But if you don't know how to work Max for Live, I know I didn't, I still don't, but you know, I figured something like this was necessary, just for my purpose sake. But yeah, anyway, cheers everybody. I'm gonna log off and start building some more patches, because there's a lot of things. My plan is to do one for pretty much everything possible, which was going to take some tedious work, but I'm determined to do it, because it's just going to make my life so much easier when I start implementing Reason more often in my projects, because I want something in Reason to, or in Ableton to control these things, because it's just a pain in the ass to use automation if I want to play around with it. And if I can just find a patch in Reason, figure out what I want to play around with, and then never have to think about it again, that'd be nice. So anyway, yeah, more to come, unless you guys want to watch me do it, which I seriously doubt. I'll stop the video and then restream again. How about that? Well, that's it for this one. Yeah.